As Shugang introduced me, my name is Yannick Deilly. I'm the Trade Commissioner for Paris. In Paris, I'm responsible for agriculture, agri-food, and fisheries. Today's presentation is about agriculture and agri-food market overview of France and the new opportunities for companies with CETA provisional implementation. So as you may know, CETA will be provisionally implemented as from September 21st, in 2 weeks from now. So when we look into the French market, it's one of the major markets in the EU with 66 million people. The French population is just behind the German population in the EU. France is a major importer of seafood products. Half of the French consumption of seafood products is imported. So there's a natural fit for the Canadian exports. And while food consumption is flat in France, it's not expanding. Market is mature, although there are some evolutions, but market is mature by itself. While the market is mature, we've had a significant increase of Canadian agri-food exports to France over the last 3 years, plus 94%. It went from 250 million to close to $490 million. About the French market again, there's a very large food service sector in France that is related to tourism. For an example, there are more than 20 million tourists in Paris alone every year. Also, other interesting facts about the French market: there's a very wide range of food products offered to consumers. Some of these food products are French, but some others are imported. And also, although both discount products and private labels both make a significant market segment, the bulk of the market is still made of medium or high-end products. So the local trends, the recent trends are, as in many European markets, the organic, local, vegan is coming up. Then we have the ethnic and simpler food. Gluten-free is a feature of many new products. And overall, there are less visits to large supermarkets in France recently, and more visits to smaller supermarkets or local stores. And also when you get into millennials, looks like they have different food habits. I wouldn't say they rely on snacks, but snacks is a big thing for millennials. They also have sugary pleasures while on the same time looking for healthy options. And also online ordering and online experience is a big thing for them, as well as takeaway and food delivery when it's possible. And they are influenced by cool brands, and these are the major cool brands in France. They find it's interesting to have these products. So Michel and Augustin, it's a dairy company. Innocent is a smoothie company, and Ben & Jerry's is the ice cream company. And despite all I've said before about millennials, some of them cook, so some of them may integrate into mainstream in the future, but we don't know that. On the French market, Canada and Quebec are very popular brands. Although food products from Canada and Quebec are not very famous, so there's a kind of discrepancy. The food products do not take advantage of the popularity of Canada and Quebec. And also something you'll hear if you come to France is about French food products. They're supposed to be the best in the world. So when it comes to processed foods, it's always difficult to advertise or to give positive things about processed food in France, because there will always be a comment at the end of the discussion that French foods overall are better than any other food in the world. So there is a challenge to sell processed products for various reasons, not only because the French think their products are the best in the world. There are other issues like labeling, but there are solutions to this. So just here is an example of what can be done. On the left-hand side is a maple syrup made by a Quebec company called Descassers. It is sold in France through a distributor, and it's available online through this distributor. But on the right-hand side, there's another company that makes maple syrup it bottles the maple syrup in France, and it imports drums instead. So the big drums, well, they originate in Canada, but the Maple Joe brand is a French brand, and that it's the major maple syrup seller in France. So there's always a solution. And why is it so that Maple Joe is popular? Is because it's a marketing company, so they make a lot of efforts in advertising, and they're also present in almost every supermarket in France. So they have distribution available. CETA, when it comes to CETA, at this moment CETA is not implemented, and food products from Canada, they are stuck with very high duties when they enter the EU. CETA will erase duties on most of food products originating in Canada. The date of provisional application is 21st September 2017, as most of you know. So it's an enforcement because, well, it's the part of the agreement which deals with duties and tariffs will come into effect on 21st September. But rules of origin will apply. So what does it mean, the rules of origin? Well, we have specialists online, but just to simplify, there are rules to determine whether products are qualified as Canadian origin. And here is a small, short summary of what they should be. They should be either wholly obtained, like maple syrup or grains grown in Canada, for example, or fish landed in Canada. Or they could be, if they are processed products, where there's a series of rules that they should respect, and what we call PSRO, product-specific rules of origin. They depend on each processed products. And if eventually this processed product doesn't qualify under the PSRO rules, then there are origin quotas, which are made in these cases to help Canadian businesses that cannot respect the PSRO rules to be able to export a certain volume of processed products who do not qualify under these rules, to export them to the EU with the benefit of the agreement. But CETA does not change all the rules, and especially the other rules, which are not the tariffs, not the duty rules. And on the technical side, the importation of most of fruit, vegetables, seafood, and alcoholic beverage, I would say this importation is relatively easy. There's a small difficulty with wine, but it's not very difficult to import these products on the technical side. The importation of products of animal origin is relatively complicated because the establishments that process these products, they have to be listed with the EU, plus there's a certain number of sanitary certification involved. The importation of pet foods is relatively easy, and in fact there's a significant Canadian exports to the EU already. Most of consumer products don't need any registration at all or prior approval before their importation in the EU. So there's no registration process. But although there's no registration process, products must be compliant to a series of EU rules, and especially labeling, composition rules that are not very familiar to Canadian businesses. And these rules are not user-friendly, and they are not familiar to exporters. So about CETA, this is a short summary of what CETA will do on agriculture and agri-food products. On the left-hand side, there's a list of products, but this list is not complete, of all the products that for which the duties go to zero on the first day of implementation. So we have to start with pet food, and this is a long list, but a lot of products are maple syrup, of course, for example, but also fresh apples, honey, which currently has a 17.3% duty, durum wheat semolina. So these products on the left-hand side, their duties go to zero. Then on the right-hand side, we have those products which have a phasing-in period. And the phasing-in means that the elimination of duties is not immediate. So these are mostly cereals and cereal products. And we also have, in the meat sector, we have there's no full access to the EU market. There's a partial access through quotas. So these quotas they are phased in over a certain number of years, and for beef and pork we have a significant quota, but it is phased in over 5 years, while for bison we have 3,000 tons, but there's no phasing in, there's an immediate quota that is available. So this slide is about seafoods. Why is it so? It's because in fact CETA will eliminate tariffs on all fishery products. So on the left hand side, these are the very numerous products for which the elimination is immediate. It goes from live lobster, which has a current duty of 8%, frozen shrimp 12%, we have frozen snow crab, we have also the scallops, which are very important for France, but also have freshwater fish, for example, frozen snow crab, as I said, so processed salmon. All these products on the left hand side, their duty go to 0. Then on the right hand side we have these products for which there's a phasing in period, and this is 3 years for frozen lobsters whole, for example, and then 5 years for processed lobster, mostly lobster meat, for example, and we have 7 years for a short list of processed products, mostly shellfish and also cod. So, but at the end of these 7 years, all fishery products are duty-free. CETA introduces rules of origin, as in all international agreements, and exporters must ensure that their products meet the applicable rules of origin. So the very simple rule of origin is when products are wholly obtained. Wholly obtained is, as I gave examples before, fishery products, grains, fruit and vegetables that are grown in Canada. They are originating in Canada. It's very easy to understand. And also animal products when the animals have been born, reared and slaughtered in Canada. Then processed products, which are produced in Canada using non-originating materials. And for example, sugar that is available in Canada is considered as non-originating. So they must check that they satisfy the applicable product-specific rule of origin, as I said before. So when you have a processed product, you should start by checking the HS code of your product. Why is it so? It's because the HS code determines the applicable rule of origin. And if you're not sure of your HS code, then you should consult eventually with the trade commissioner like me, or obtain a binding ruling from the EU Customs Authority. And even though, as I said, even though some products may not qualify under the PSRO, there are origin quotas for a series of processed products. Second, some things that don't change by the EU is the labeling. And labeling, it's not that it's very complicated, I would say. Well, I'm very familiar with European labeling, as you may think, but the thing is that it is different from the Canadian rules. So we have a very important regulation that was passed 5 years ago, and it's been in force now for 3 years. And while the provisions are related to the name of the food, for example, and what kind of picture you can use on the label, and the way you warn people about allergens, and these are requirements of related to Regulation 1169. So, and an important fact also is about this nutritional labeling. The table that is introduced by this regulation, while it's very different from the Canadian table. Basically, the Canadian table, as the American table, is based on a portion, while the EU is based on the values for 100 grams. And it changes everything because it must be labeled for 100 grams and eventually for a portion, while the Canadian table must be labeled for a portion to start with. So it makes things quite difficult. In fact, the Canadian table in the end cannot be used for the EU. You have to draft it completely again. And also some interpretative opinion, they explain that they limit the use of certain terms such as pure, natural and GMO free. In fact, I must say that the EU is much more restrictive about these terms than most of Canadian labeling. Second thing about labeling, that there are other EU regulations that include provisions related to the labeling of organic food. There's a EU logo that should appear on the package. Also novel foods, The fishery products, they have their own series where they have two requirements: the common name plus the scientific name, and also they have a requirement about fishing area and the gear that is used in fishing. Also, when you have health and nutrition claims, they should go by the applicable EU rules. And when you have ingredients derived from GMOs, such as cornstarch that is made from GMO corn, then it should be labeled as such. And finally, other rules of importance that are not related to labeling. There are maximum levels from some additives and composition rules. The bottle contents, we've run into trouble lately for some alcoholic beverages. There's a series of bottle contents that is approved, but then there are some contents that are not approved. And also there's a maximum level for some contaminants like heavy metals and pesticide residues, and there are sanitary requirements. To finish about labeling, national requirements, French requirements. These are two French requirements. On alcoholic beverage, there should be a pregnant woman logo. It is a warning that has been introduced about 5 years ago. And the green dot, which is present in France and Germany and sometimes Netherlands and Spain, it means that the packaging has paid, well, the importer has paid a small fee for recycling the packaging. So who can help about these labeling issues? Well, the Trade Commissioner Service and myself, I can certainly help, but your importer or the Exporters Association in Canada, and eventually French or European consultants. The potential customers for your products in France, well, we have here the names of the major retailers. They have a network of large supermarkets, very large supermarkets, depend on the company in France. They're established all over the country. So I would say the market, in fact, the number of retailers is rather high in France. I would say there are still 7 major retailers, while in some countries like in the UK there are 3 major retailers. So it's not so concentrated as it could be. And these are interesting companies. And they are also have some smaller specialized retailers chain which are of importance, and especially Picard, which is a large frozen food chain which has more than 800 stores in France. And you have the organic retail chains. There are 3 major networks in France. So in food service, you have, these are the 3 major players in the sector: Metro, Promocash, and Davigel, and also Relais d'Or. So we have contacts in these food service companies. In fact, several of their buyers have been sent to Canada in the past. Also, you have the specialized fresh seafood importers, which have their own distribution channel, because fresh seafood needs to be handled separately. And then B2B, ingredients distributors or processors may purchase directly. And specialized importer in these 2 sectors, the alcoholic beverages and specialty foods. And to finish it, the internet sales to consumer through dedicated sites, it exists. About the potential customers, I would like to underline that maybe retailers are not natural buyers of Canadian products. Why is it so? It's because, well, their business is in retailing and distribution. It's not in importing from third countries, as we say in the EU. It means importing from outside the EU. It's too complicated. So they're not interested in importing most of the times. And end users, so the consumers of your products, or are they interested in the product origin? Sometimes yes, but sometimes no. Especially in the food service sector, sometimes they're not interested in knowing where the fish comes from. They just need a good fish. So some retailers won't import directly at all, and this is a list of Carrefour, Auchan, Casino, and Monoprix, unless sometimes for a large volume of a product that they already carry. And some retailers may import directly because they have regional buyers, and especially Leclerc and Intermarché. Food service, on the other hand, they do import directly, so you can have a direct relationship with the food service buyers. Although in the specialized fresh seafood importers, yes, they are direct importers, and this is a picture that was taken the Rungis, the wholesale market in the south of Paris. That also we have direct importers in this market. B2B processors, yes, they can be direct importers. It depends on volume. And ingredients distributors, yes, they are direct importers. Also, specialized importers, like we said before, alcoholic beverages and specialty foods, yes, they are direct importers, so you can deal directly with them. About the end users and buyers, so sometimes they're the same person, but sometimes they are a separate person. So it's very important for your business to determine what are your international options and do you have time for the market. If you don't have time, then you should go through a distributor that has more time. It depends on your willingness to spend sometimes for the market. So if you want to sell direct, you have time to keep a consistent relationship with existing customers while at the same time searching for new ones. And you may end up like this poor gentleman that has no time for the market. So know your buyers and your end users. Sometimes some people, they sell through brokers. I've seen that in the fishery sector. They didn't even know where their products were going to which country. So sometimes it's a pity not to know and not to get any feedback from the end users or the end buyers. And it is, I would say, it is necessary to probe the interest and their feedback and the customer satisfaction for all exporters. Selling through an importer distributor may be a good thing. I don't say it's a bad thing. It's selecting your importer distributor that is important. So finding one and establishing a good relationship with your importer, while at the same time making it clear what kind of time you're ready to spend for your customers abroad. And is your distributor willing to be transparent with you? Maybe not. Maybe he wants to protect his own business. Maybe is ready to visit the major customers with you when you're available in Europe. Will CETA help? Yes, I think CETA will help tremendously because of the very high level of duties that is currently in place. So for CETA to help, well, first you should make sure that your products satisfy the rules of origin, especially if you have processed products. But Canadian products will be more competitive. Sometimes it has impact because they can be more competitive when in the international marketplace when there are plenty of competitors. But for some products, it doesn't mean that there are many competitors. For example, processed lobster, well, there's only Canada that exports processed lobster to the EU. So when you see a processed lobster in the EU, it is coming from Canada. But it should be more competitive versus other competitive products like a very large shrimp, for example. So duties is only part of the equation, and the rest, of course, what CETA opens a new option. It opens an option to have a local inventory because there's no duties attached to importing the product again. So you could eventually think of a local inventory plus a sale on a DDP basis. It means a sale duty paid in Europe, in France, Germany, and in many important countries. It should mean that you in the end you open a subsidiary in Europe, but this is a new option, I would say. It depends on what time and efforts you're ready to give to this market. When an importer is not available, and I'm running out of time, so I go fast, for alcoholic beverages, for food ingredients, for fresh fish and shellfish, it's not feasible to avoid an importer. And dealing with large retailers, sometimes they will require an importer also, especially for inventory reasons very often. And when a product is sold to an individual through the internet, well, you should have a website that is existing in the EU for invoicing reasons. Finally, taking advantage of events, and we have the Anuga that is coming up in Germany. And how do you take advantage of events? Well, I would say major trade fairs are a very important moment in the business community in Europe. That's a moment to meet with existing customers and to find new customers. So trade fairs will save you time as an exporter, as most of the relevant industry is already here. You can organize all your meetings at the trade fairs, and you can extend your stay to visit important buyers and eventually some end users. So also important a key moment to probe competition and to do some store checks. It needs some preparation and scheduling, while at the show you should meet as many people as possible. So good luck on the French market. The Trade Commissioner Service, as I said, is here to help you.